What if I told you that 3 simple words, when spoken with absolute conviction, before touching any lottery ticket, could completely transform your relationship with money and manifest unexpected wealth into your life? What if everything you've been taught about luck, chance, and probability is actually blocking the very abundance that's rightfully yours? Before we dive into this life-changing revelation, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. It's always incredible to see our global community coming together to learn these powerful principles of manifestation and abundance. I want to share something with you that most people will never discover in their lifetime. The secret I'm about to reveal isn't taught in schools, isn't discussed in financial planning seminars, and certainly isn't shared by the lottery industry. But once you understand and apply this principle, you'll never look at money, opportunity, or your own power the same way again. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have all the luck when it comes to money? Why certain individuals win contests, receive unexpected windfalls, and always seem to be in the right place at the right time when financial opportunities arise? The answer isn't luck at all, it's law. Spiritual law that operates with mathematical precision, and today you're going to learn how to harness it. Florence Scovel Shinn, one of the greatest teachers of spiritual prosperity principles, discovered something remarkable during her decades of working with thousands of students. She found that there's an invisible force that governs all financial outcomes, a law that responds not to chance or probability, but to the spoken word, when delivered with unwavering faith and conviction. The lottery ticket in your hand isn't a random piece of paper hoping to be chosen by chance. It's a physical symbol of a much deeper spiritual principle at work. When you understand how to align yourself with this principle, before you even purchase that ticket, you transform from someone gambling on luck to someone operating under divine law. This isn't about wishful thinking or positive psychology. This is about understanding the fundamental mechanics of how abundance flows in the universe, and learning to position yourself as a conscious receiver of that flow. The 3 words I'm going to share with you today have been tested, proven, and verified by countless individuals who've experienced financial miracles that seemed impossible just days before. But first, let me tell you about Sarah's story, because it perfectly illustrates the power of what you're about to learn. Sarah was a single mother working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck with no savings and a mountain of debt that seemed insurmountable. She had tried affirmations before, had read about manifestation, but nothing seemed to work. The harder she tried, the worse her financial situation became. Every morning, Sarah would wake up with a knot in her stomach, immediately calculating how many hours she had to work that day, just to keep her head above water. Her first job was cleaning offices before dawn. Her second was working as a cashier at a grocery store until late evening. Between jobs, she would pick up her daughter from school, help with homework during her lunch break, and try to squeeze in a few moments of rest before starting the cycle all over again. Sarah's apartment was small and cramped, with outdated appliances that seemed to break down at the worst possible moments. The heating system was unreliable, forcing her to choose between staying warm and keeping the electricity bill manageable. Her car was on its last legs, making strange noises that she couldn't afford to have diagnosed, let alone repaired. Every day felt like a precarious balancing act between competing financial emergencies. The stress was taking its toll on every aspect of Sarah's life. She had developed chronic headaches from the constant worry about money. Her relationship with her daughter was strained, because she was always exhausted and irritable. She had stopped socializing entirely, because she couldn't afford to go out with friends. The weight of financial pressure was crushing her spirit and stealing her joy. Sarah had tried everything. she could think of to improve her situation. She had applied for better paying jobs but lacked the qualifications or experience employers wanted. She had looked into going back to school, but couldn't afford the tuition or find time for classes. She had attempted various side hustles and work from home opportunities, but none generated enough income to make a meaningful difference. One particularly difficult week, Sarah's car had broken down. Her daughter needed school supplies she couldn't afford, and her landlord had increased the rent with 30 days' notice. She felt completely overwhelmed and desperately alone. That's when a coworker mentioned something about the power of words to influence financial outcomes. The coworker had heard about it from a friend, who claimed to have experienced a financial turnaround after learning about spiritual prosperity principles. Initially, Sarah was skeptical. She had been raised to believe that hard work was the only path to financial success, and the idea that words could influence money seemed too good to be true. But her coworker insisted that her friend had experienced real, measurable changes in her financial situation after learning to align her consciousness with abundance rather than scarcity. That evening, exhausted and desperate, Sarah found herself standing in a convenience store, holding her last $5, debating whether to buy a lottery ticket or use the money for her daughter's school lunch the next day. The decision felt symbolic of everything wrong with her life. She was literally choosing between hope for the future and provision for the present. In that moment of complete desperation, she remembered something her coworker had mentioned about speaking words of power before making any financial decision. Instead of buying the ticket with her usual mixture of hope and resignation, Sarah held that $5 bill and decided to try something different. She closed her eyes for a moment and spoke 3 specific words with more conviction than she had ever spoken anything in her life. Not as a wish, not as a desperate prayer, but as a declaration of something she suddenly knew to be true. She spoke these words as if they were already reality, as if the universe had no choice but to respond to her command. The moment she spoke those words, Sarah felt something shift inside her. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, but there was a subtle change in her energy, a quiet confidence that she hadn't felt in years. She purchased the lottery ticket, but her relationship to it was completely different. Instead of clutching it with desperate hope, she held it with calm certainty. What happened next changed everything, not just financially, but in ways Sarah never could have imagined. The lottery ticket won a modest amount, not life-changing money, but enough to cover her daughter's school expenses and fix her car. But that was just the beginning of a series of remarkable synchronicities that began unfolding in her life. Within 2 weeks of that pivotal moment in the convenience store, Sarah received a phone call that would alter the trajectory of her entire family's future. It was from a distant relative she barely remembered, an elderly aunt who had been tracking down family members to inform them of an unexpected inheritance. Apparently, Sarah's great-grandmother had owned some property that had recently been sold, and Sarah was entitled to a portion of the proceeds. The inheritance wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial enough to eliminate Sarah's debt, provide a down payment on a better apartment, and create an emergency fund she had never been able to establish. But the financial windfall was only part of the transformation. The confidence Sarah had felt when speaking those 3 words began permeating other areas of her life. At her grocery store job, Sarah found herself naturally interacting with customers in a more positive, engaging way. Her supervisor noticed the change and offered her additional responsibilities that came with increased pay. A regular customer, impressed by Sarah's service and attitude, mentioned a job opening at her company that would utilize Sarah's organizational skills and offer better hours and benefits. The side business idea Sarah had been considering for years suddenly seemed not only possible, but inevitable. She had always been good at organizing, and had helped friends and neighbors declutter their homes for free. Now, with her newfound confidence and clarity, she began charging for these services and discovered there was significant demand in her area for professional organizing. Within 6 months of that pivotal moment in the convenience store, Sarah's life had been completely transformed. She had left both of her exhausting jobs and was running a successful organizing business while working part-time at a company that offered good benefits and flexible hours. Her income had more than doubled, her stress had decreased dramatically, and her relationship with her daughter had been restored. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah had discovered something that would serve her for the rest of her life: the understanding that her consciousness, her beliefs, and her words had the power to shape her reality in ways she had never imagined possible. The 3 words she had spoken weren't magic spells, but keys that had unlocked her own inner power to create positive change. The words Sarah spoke weren't magical incantations or ancient spells. They were based on a spiritual principle that Florence Scovel Shinn had documented and taught for decades. A principle that operates whether you believe in it or not, whether you understand it or not, and whether you use it consciously or remain ignorant of its power. You see, most people approach lottery tickets, and money in general, from a consciousness of lack and limitation. They say things like, "I hope I win, but I probably won't," or "it would be nice if this worked out. But these things never happen to me." They're unconsciously programming their subconscious mind for failure before they even begin. This programming happens so subtly that most people are completely unaware of it. From childhood, we absorb beliefs about money, success, and our own worthiness that become the invisible framework through which we interpret every financial experience. These beliefs operate like a filter, determining what opportunities we notice, what actions we take, and what results we expect. If you grew up hearing phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "We can't afford that," or "Rich people are greedy," these messages became embedded in your subconscious mind as fundamental truths about the nature of money and abundance. Your subconscious doesn't question these beliefs. It simply accepts them as facts and organizes your experience to confirm them. When you approach a lottery ticket with this scarcity programming still active in your subconscious, you're essentially asking the universe to confirm your deepest beliefs about limitation and lack. Your words might say, "I hope I win," but your subconscious programming is broadcasting, "I don't really expect anything good to happen," or "I'm not the kind of person who wins." But when you understand the true nature of abundance and how to align yourself with it, everything changes. You stop operating from hope and start operating from knowing. You stop relying on luck and start invoking law. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a conscious creator of your financial reality. The principle I'm sharing with you today has its roots in quantum physics, where scientists have discovered that the observer affects the observed, that consciousness plays a fundamental role in shaping reality at the most basic level. Dieter Jacobo Grimberg, whose research we'll explore in more detail, spent decades studying how consciousness interacts with reality, and discovered that our minds don't simply observe the world, they actively participate in creating it. When you combine this scientific understanding with the spiritual wisdom that Florence Scovel Shinn taught, you discover a practical method for influencing outcomes that most people assume are completely random. This isn't about denying the role of external factors or pretending that positive thinking alone can solve every problem. It's about understanding the often overlooked role that consciousness plays in shaping our experience. Your subconscious mind is like a powerful computer that's constantly running programs based on your deepest beliefs and expectations. These programs operate below the threshold of conscious awareness, automatically influencing every decision you make, every opportunity you notice or ignore, and even the energy you project into the world. Most people have programmed their subconscious for financial struggle through years of negative conditioning about money. They've absorbed beliefs that money is scarce, that financial success requires sacrifice and struggle, that they don't deserve abundance, and that wealthy people must have compromised their integrity to achieve prosperity. These subconscious programs are so deeply embedded that they operate automatically, like software running in the background of your computer. You might consciously want financial abundance, but if your subconscious programming is oriented towards scarcity and limitation, that deeper programming will always override your conscious desires. When you approach a lottery ticket, with this limiting programming still active, you're essentially asking the universe to confirm your deepest beliefs about financial lack. Your conscious mind might hope for a win, but your subconscious is broadcasting expectation of loss. And the subconscious always wins, because it's operating from a much deeper level of mental processing. But when you learn to reprogram your subconscious mind with the truth about abundance, when you understand that prosperity is your natural state and financial flow is governed by spiritual law rather than random chance, everything in your experience begins to shift. This shift happens gradually at first, then accelerates as the new programming takes hold. Opportunities that were always present suddenly become visible to you. Your brain's reticular activating system, which filters the millions of sensory inputs you receive every moment, begins highlighting possibilities that align with your new abundance programming, while filtering out information that contradicts it. Connections that were waiting to be made suddenly appear in your experience. You find yourself in conversations with people who can help you, in places where opportunities are available, and in situations where your skills and talents are valued and needed. Resources that were available all along suddenly become accessible to you. Information you need finds its way to you, tools you can use become available, and support systems manifest in your life, just when you need them most. The 3 words I'm going to share with you work, because they bypass the conscious mind's resistance, and speak directly to the subconscious, where all real change begins. They create a new neural pathway in your brain, a new program that operates with the frequency of abundance, rather than scarcity. When you speak these words before touching any lottery ticket, you're essentially installing new software in your mental computer. Let me tell you about Marcus, another individual whose life was transformed through understanding this principle. Marcus was a construction worker who had been struggling financially for years, trapped in a cycle of seasonal employment that left him scrambling for work during slow periods and exhausted during busy seasons. Marcus lived in a small trailer on the outskirts of town, driving an old pickup truck that required constant repairs and working for contractors who often paid late or tried to negotiate down his already modest fees. He had skills and experience, but lacked the resources to start his own business or the connections to find steady, paying work. Every winter, Marcus would face the same financial crisis as construction work slowed down. He would file for unemployment benefits, take odd jobs that barely covered his basic expenses, and watch his small savings disappear, while waiting for spring to bring steady work again. The stress of this cycle was wearing him down, both physically and emotionally. Marcus would occasionally buy lottery tickets, but always with the resigned attitude of someone who expected nothing and was rarely disappointed. He saw the lottery as what he called the tax on people who are bad at math, but would sometimes indulge in the fantasy of winning enough money to start his own contracting business. His approach to lottery tickets reflected his overall relationship with money, a mixture of cynicism and resignation seasoned with just enough hope to keep trying. He would buy a ticket, briefly imagine what he would do with the winnings. Then file it away in his wallet and forget about it until the drawing results were announced. When Marcus learned about the three-word principle through a coworker who had heard about it from a friend, his initial reaction was skepticism mixed with mild curiosity. The whole concept seemed too simple, too good to be true. But his financial situation was challenging enough that he was willing to consider alternatives to his usual approach. The coworker explained that the principle wasn't really about lottery tickets. It was about changing your relationship with money and abundance at a fundamental level. He described how his friend had experienced not just a lottery win, but a complete transformation in her financial circumstances after learning to align her consciousness with prosperity rather than scarcity. Marcus was intrigued but remained skeptical. He had been disappointed by get-rich-quick schemes and motivational programs before, and this sounded like it might be another version of the same false promises. But something about the way his coworker described the principle resonated with him, particularly the emphasis on changing internal beliefs rather than external strategies. That weekend, instead of buying his usual ticket with the familiar feeling of futile hope, mixed with cynical expectation, Marcus decided to try a different approach. He had been thinking about the three words his coworker had mentioned, and something about them felt significant, even powerful. Standing in the convenience store, where he usually purchased his weekly ticket, Marcus took a moment to center himself and really consider what he was doing. Instead of mechanically going through the motions of buying a ticket he expected to lose, he held the money in his hand and spoke the three words with as much conviction as he could muster. The moment he spoke those words, Marcus felt something shift inside him. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, but there was a subtle change in his energy, a quiet confidence that he'd never experienced before when buying a lottery ticket. He purchased the ticket, but his entire relationship to it had changed. Instead of filing the ticket away in his wallet and forgetting about it, Marcus found himself thinking about those three words throughout the week, not obsessively, but with a sense of curiosity and growing conviction. There was something about them that felt true in a way he couldn't quite explain. The ticket itself didn't win the jackpot, but something even more remarkable began happening in Marcus's life. The confidence he had felt when speaking those words began extending into other areas of his experience. At work, he found himself naturally taking more initiative, making suggestions that were well received, and approaching challenges with a problem-solving mindset rather than just accepting difficulties as inevitable. Marcus began noticing opportunities that had been invisible to him before. A conversation with a supplier led to information about a contractor who was looking for reliable subcontractors. A chance encounter at a coffee shop connected him with someone who needed exactly the kind of work Marcus specialized in. Within a month of that pivotal moment in the convenience store, Marcus received a call that would change the trajectory of his entire career. It was from a former colleague who had started his own contracting business and was looking for an experienced partner. The colleague had remembered Marcus's skills and work ethic and wanted to explore the possibility of forming a partnership. This opportunity represented everything Marcus had dreamed of, but never quite believed was possible for him. The partnership would provide steady income, year-round work, and the chance to build something meaningful, rather than just surviving from one job to the next. As they discussed the details of the partnership, Marcus realized that his new colleague was offering him exactly what he needed at exactly the right time. The timing was so perfect, the opportunity so aligned with his skills and goals, that it felt like more than coincidence. Within 6 months of speaking those three words in the convenience store, Marcus had doubled his income, established financial stability for the first time in years, and was working on projects that challenged and fulfilled him. But more importantly, he had discovered a principle that continued to guide his decisions and shape his experience. The partnership led to other opportunities. Marcus found himself naturally attracting clients who appreciated his work and paid promptly. His reputation in the community began growing, leading to referrals and repeat business. Within 2 years, he had established his own successful construction company and was employing other workers who had been in situations similar to his own. But perhaps most significantly, Marcus had learned to trust his own power, to influence his circumstances through the consciousness he brought to every situation. The 3 words had been the catalyst, but the real transformation was in his understanding of how his beliefs and expectations shaped his reality. This is the crucial point that most people miss when they hear these stories. The power isn't in the lottery ticket itself, and it isn't even in the specific words you speak. The power is in the consciousness you bring to any financial endeavor, the beliefs you hold about money and abundance, and your understanding of your own creative potential. When you align yourself with the frequency of abundance, through speaking words of power, you become a magnet for prosperity in all its forms. The lottery ticket might be the catalyst, but the real attraction is happening at the level of consciousness, drawing opportunities, connections, and resources that match your new vibrational frequency. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that your word is your wand, meaning that the words you speak with conviction have the power to reshape your reality. This isn't poetry or metaphor. It's a practical principle that operates with scientific precision. Every word you speak creates a vibration that ripples through the quantum field of infinite possibilities, attracting circumstances that match that vibration. Modern quantum physics has provided a scientific framework for understanding how this principle operates. The observer effect demonstrates that consciousness plays a fundamental role in determining physical outcomes at the quantum level. When you change your consciousness about money and abundance, you literally begin creating different quantum possibilities that manifest as improved financial circumstances. G.D.R. Jacobo Grimberg spent decades researching the relationship between consciousness and reality, conducting rigorous scientific studies that demonstrated how our mental states influence physical outcomes. His work revealed that consciousness doesn't simply observe reality, it actively participates in creating reality through subtle, but measurable effects on the quantum field. When most people buy lottery tickets, they're unconsciously speaking words of limitation. I never win anything. This probably won't work. I'm not lucky with these things. These words create a vibrational frequency of lack and limitation that actually repels the very abundance they're seeking to attract. These limiting words aren't just thoughts, they're creative forces that shape your experience at the quantum level. Every word you speak with emotion and conviction creates a template in the field of infinite possibilities, attracting circumstances that match the energy of that template. But when you understand how to speak words of power, words that align with spiritual law rather than human limitation, you create an entirely different vibrational frequency. You transform from someone hoping luck will smile upon them to someone who knows that abundance is their divine right, and lottery tickets are simply one of many channels through which prosperity can flow. The 3 words that changed Sarah's life, that opened doors for Marcus, and that have created financial miracles for thousands of people around the world, are deceptively simple. Their power doesn't come from their complexity, but from their alignment with universal truth. These words, when spoken with absolute conviction, create what Florence Scovel Shinn called a perfect thought and divine mind. Before I reveal these words, I want you to understand the proper consciousness from which to use them. This isn't a magic spell that works regardless of your state of mind. These words derive their power from the faith and conviction behind them. When you speak them, you must speak as someone who knows, not someone who hopes. You must declare them as spiritual law, not as a desperate plea to fortune. The mental state you maintain while speaking these words is crucial. You're not begging the universe for favor. You're not trying to convince lottery numbers to align in your favor. You're recognizing and declaring a spiritual truth that was established before you were born. A law that operates whether you acknowledge it or not. Think about gravity for a moment. Gravity operates consistently regardless of whether you understand it, believe in it, or even think about it. You don't have to convince gravity to work. You simply have to align yourself with its operation. If you step off a cliff, gravity will demonstrate its reality regardless of your beliefs about it. Spiritual law operates with the same consistency and reliability as physical law. The law of abundance operates whether you're aware of it or not. Money flows according to spiritual principles that are just as reliable as gravity. But most people never learn to align themselves with these principles. When you speak the 3 words, I'm about to share with absolute conviction, you're not trying to manipulate external outcomes. You're aligning your consciousness with a spiritual truth that already exists. You're recognizing that abundance is not something you need to create or attract. It's something you need to allow by removing the mental blocks that have been preventing its natural flow. Sarah understood this principle intuitively when she held that $5 bill in the convenience store. She wasn't trying to force the universe to make her ticket win. She was declaring her alignment with a prosperity consciousness that recognized abundance as her natural state. The universe responded not to her words alone, but to the consciousness behind those words. This is why the same words spoken by different people can produce dramatically different results. The words themselves are vehicles for consciousness. When they're spoken from a state of genuine faith and alignment with spiritual truth, they carry tremendous power. When they're spoken from desperation, doubt, or mechanical repetition, they carry very little influence at all. Let me share another story that illustrates this principle beautifully. Jennifer was a high school teacher who had been struggling with student loan debt for over a decade. Despite having a master's degree and working in a profession she loved, she felt trapped by financial obligations that seemed to grow faster than her ability to pay them down. Jennifer's student loans had accumulated during her undergraduate and graduate studies, and despite making consistent payments for years, the principal balance had barely decreased due to interest and various fees. She had tried debt consolidation, income-based repayment plans, and even took on additional part-time work tutoring students, but the debt seemed like an insurmountable mountain. The financial stress was affecting every aspect of Jennifer's life. She lived in a small apartment that she shared with a roommate to keep costs down. She drove an old car that she couldn't afford to replace. She rarely went out with friends because she couldn't afford entertainment expenses. Most painfully, she had postponed dreams of marriage and starting a family because she felt she couldn't burden a partner with her financial problems. Every month, Jennifer would sit at her kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, trying to figure out how to make her modest teacher's salary stretch to cover her necessities while still making the minimum payments on her loans. The math never worked out favorably, leaving her with a constant undercurrent of anxiety about her financial future. Jennifer had tried various approaches to manifestation and positive thinking, but approached them with the analytical mindset of an educator, rather than the faith of a true believer. She would dutifully recite affirmations, while simultaneously calculating exactly how much money she would need to eliminate her debt, and the gap between her visualizations and her mathematical reality seemed impossibly wide. When Jennifer first heard about the $3 word principle from a colleague at school. She dismissed it as too simplistic to work for her complex financial situation. Her logical mind couldn't accept that something so straightforward could address challenges that required tens of thousands of dollars to resolve. But her colleague, sensing Jennifer's skepticism, took time to explain that the power wasn't in the words themselves, but in the consciousness shift they could create when spoken with genuine faith and understanding. She described how the principle worked by aligning your mental and emotional state with abundance, rather than scarcity, which then influenced your perceptions, decisions, and actions in ways that attracted financial solutions. Intrigued despite her skepticism, Jennifer decided to approach the principle, as she would any educational experiment, with careful observation and documentation of results. She bought a small lottery ticket and spoke the 3 words, but her consciousness was still rooted in analytical doubt, rather than faithful expectation. The ticket didn't win anything significant, which seemed to confirm Jennifer's initial skepticism. But something interesting happened in the days following her experiment. She found herself thinking differently about money and her financial situation. The words she had spoken, even with limited conviction, had created a small crack in her consciousness of financial limitation. Jennifer began noticing opportunities and possibilities that had been invisible to her before. She heard about grant programs for teachers that she had never known existed. She learned about loan forgiveness programs that might apply to her situation. She discovered side income opportunities that aligned with her skills and schedule as an educator. Most significantly, Jennifer began feeling less helpless about her financial situation. Instead of seeing her debt as an immovable obstacle, she started viewing it as a challenge that could be solved through creativity and persistence. This shift in perspective began influencing her actions in subtle but important ways. Intrigued by these subtle changes, Jennifer decided to approach the principle more seriously. She spent time studying Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings about the relationship between consciousness and manifestation. She began to understand that abundance isn't something external that you attract, but something internal that you allow by removing the beliefs and emotions that block its natural flow. Jennifer realized that her analytical approach to manifestation had been counterproductive. By constantly calculating and analyzing her financial situation, she was reinforcing her focus on lack and limitation, rather than opening herself to receive abundance. She understood that faith and analysis were incompatible mental states when it came to manifestation. When Jennifer bought her next lottery ticket several weeks later, her entire approach was different. Instead of treating it as an experiment, she spoke the 3 words as a declaration of spiritual truth. She felt a sense of alignment and certainty that she'd never experienced before in relationship to money, even if the specific outcome remained unknown. This time, the ticket won a modest amount, not life-changing money, but enough to give Jennifer tangible proof that something had shifted in her consciousness. More importantly, she felt a growing confidence that her financial challenges were solvable rather than insurmountable. Over the following months, Jennifer experienced a series of positive financial developments that seemed to flow naturally from her changed consciousness. She was accepted into a loan forgiveness program that she had applied for months earlier, but had forgotten about. She received an unexpected tax refund due to an error in her previous year's filing. She was offered a summer teaching position that provided additional income during her usual break from school. Most significantly, Jennifer developed a profitable tutoring business that utilized her teaching skills and flexible schedule. Students began seeking her out specifically, and word-of-mouth referrals created more demand than she could handle. Within a year, her tutoring income had grown to nearly match her teaching salary. The combination of loan forgiveness, additional income streams, and improved money management gradually transformed Jennifer's financial situation from desperate to stable to prosperous. But the most important transformation was in her consciousness. She had learned to see herself as someone who could solve financial challenges, rather than someone who was victimized by them. Jennifer's experience illustrates a crucial understanding about how spiritual law operates in our financial lives. The specific channel through which abundance flows, whether lottery tickets, unexpected opportunities, debt forgiveness, or new income streams, is less important than the consciousness of abundance that makes you available to receive through any channel. When you align your consciousness with prosperity, the universe becomes incredibly creative in finding ways to deliver that prosperity to you. Sometimes it might manifest through a lottery win, sometimes through an unexpected business opportunity, sometimes through the resolution of a financial problem you thought was unsolvable. This is why focusing too specifically on one particular channel can actually limit your results. When you declare that abundance must come through winning the lottery, you're placing restrictions on how the universe can deliver your good. But when you understand that the lottery ticket is simply one possible channel among infinite possibilities, you open yourself to receive abundance in whatever form it can flow most easily. Florence Scovel Shinn taught her students to always add the phrase "under grace in perfect ways" to their declarations. This phrase serves as both protection and guidance, ensuring that abundance flows through channels that are beneficial to everyone involved and aligned with divine timing. It prevents you from manifesting abundance in ways that might create problems or complications in your life. When you speak the 3 words I'm about to share, I encourage you to add this phrase as a safeguard and guidance mechanism. You're not just declaring your alignment with abundance, you're asking that this abundance flow to you in ways that serve your highest good and the highest good of all concerned. Many people who have won large lottery jackpots have discovered that sudden wealth created more problems than it solved, because they weren't prepared for it spiritually, emotionally, or practically. The phrase "under grace in perfect ways" ensures that any abundance you receive comes in a form and at a timing that you can handle wisely and beneficially. Now, let me share the 3 words that have transformed so many lives. The words that opened new possibilities for Sarah, that created opportunities for Marcus, and that helped Jennifer discover her own power to solve financial challenges. These 3 words are: I win now. These 3 simple words contain the entire principle of spiritual manifestation, compressed into a declaration that bypasses your conscious mind's resistance and speaks directly to your subconscious programming. Let me explain why these specific words are so powerful and how they work to transform your relationship with money and abundance. The word establishes you as the conscious creator of your experience, rather than a passive victim of circumstances. When you say, you're acknowledging your role as the determining factor in your own financial reality. You're not hoping that luck will smile upon you or that random chance will work in your favor. You're declaring yourself as the conscious agent who influences outcomes through the power of aligned consciousness. This first word immediately shifts you out of victim consciousness and into creator consciousness. Instead of seeing yourself as someone to whom things happen, you begin identifying as someone who makes things happen through the power of focused intention and aligned beliefs. The word win aligns you with victory consciousness rather than struggle consciousness. It shifts your identity from someone who might lose to someone who naturally attracts winning outcomes. When you declare win, you're programming your subconscious mind to automatically look for winning opportunities, make winning decisions, and expect winning results as your natural state. This word is particularly powerful because it encompasses all forms of victory, not just lottery wins. When you align with winning consciousness, you begin winning in all areas of your life. Better opportunities appear. People respond to you more positively. Challenges resolve more easily, and life begins flowing in your favor. The word now brings the victory into the present moment, rather than relegating it to some uncertain future. Your subconscious mind doesn't understand future tense, it only operates in the eternal present. When you declare now, you're programming your subconscious to begin creating winning circumstances immediately rather than at some vague future time. This present tense declaration is crucial because it eliminates the unconscious postponement that sabotages many people's manifestation efforts. Instead of programming yourself for eventual success, you're programming yourself for immediate alignment with winning consciousness. When combined, these three words create a complete consciousness shift from limitation to abundance, from hoping to knowing, from future possibility to present reality. They bypass the conscious mind's tendency to analyze and doubt, speaking directly to the subconscious programming that actually controls your experience. Here's how to use these words effectively. Before purchasing any lottery ticket, hold the money in your hand and speak these words 3 times with absolute conviction. Not as someone hoping for luck, but as someone declaring spiritual law. Feel the truth of these words resonating through your entire being. See yourself as someone who naturally wins, who easily attracts abundance, who lives in alignment with prosperity consciousness. As you speak these words, allow yourself to feel the emotions of victory, abundance, and success. Your subconscious mind responds more powerfully to emotion than to logic, so infusing these words with genuine feeling amplifies their effectiveness exponentially. After speaking the words, purchase your ticket with a sense of calm certainty, rather than anxious hope. You've aligned yourself with winning consciousness, and now you trust the universe to deliver your good in perfect timing and perfect ways. Whether the ticket itself wins, or whether abundance flows to you through other channels, you've opened yourself to receive. But here's the crucial point that separates those who experience profound transformation from those who see minimal results. You must carry this winning consciousness with you, beyond the lottery ticket purchase. These words aren't magic spells that work once and then fade. They're consciousness builders that reshape your entire relationship with abundance when used consistently. I encourage you to speak these words every morning, when you wake up, and every evening before you sleep. Let them become the foundation of your financial consciousness. Use them before making any financial decision, before checking your bank account, before paying bills, before going to work. Let I win now become your financial identity, rather than just a lottery technique. The more consistently you use these words, the more deeply they reprogram your subconscious mind for success and abundance. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathways associated with winning consciousness, while weakening the old patterns of limitation and struggle. Let me share another transformative story that illustrates the cumulative power of this practice. Maria was a restaurant server who had been working in the food service industry for over 15 years. Despite her experience and dedication, she felt trapped in a cycle of irregular income, difficult customers, and physically demanding work that was taking a toll on her health and well-being. Maria's income fluctuated dramatically based on factors completely outside her control: the weather, local events, the mood of customers, and seasonal variations in restaurant traffic. During slow periods, she would struggle to pay rent and basic expenses. During busy periods, she would work exhausting double shifts, but still felt like she was barely getting ahead financially. The unpredictability of her income made it impossible for Maria to plan for the future or build any financial security. She couldn't qualify for a mortgage because her income was too irregular. She couldn't afford to take time off to pursue additional education or training. She felt stuck in a situation that provided just enough income to survive, but not enough to thrive. Maria had developed chronic back problems from years of standing and carrying heavy trays. Her sleep patterns were disrupted by working late shifts and irregular schedules. She had little energy for social activities or pursuing personal interests outside of work. The physical and emotional toll of her situation was becoming increasingly difficult to bear. When Maria first heard about the three-word principle from a coworker, she was intrigued but skeptical. She had tried various approaches to improving her financial situation, looking for better restaurant jobs, attempting to save money despite her irregular income, even considering going back to school, but nothing had created the breakthrough she needed. Her coworker explained that the principle wasn't just about lottery tickets, but about fundamentally changing your relationship with money and abundance. She described how using these words consistently had begun attracting better shifts, more generous customers, and unexpected opportunities that had significantly improved her financial situation. Maria decided to experiment with the principle, initially approaching it with curiosity rather than complete faith. She bought a small lottery ticket and spoke the three words, but her primary focus was on observing what, if anything, would change in her daily experience. The ticket itself didn't win, but Maria began noticing subtle changes in her work experience almost immediately. She seemed to be getting better sections in the restaurant, with customers who were more pleasant and generous with tips. Her interactions with coworkers became more positive and collaborative. Even difficult situations seemed to resolve more smoothly than usual. Encouraged by these small improvements, Maria began using the three words more consistently. She would speak them before each work shift, before approaching new tables, and whenever she faced challenging situations with customers or management. Over the following weeks, Maria's experience at work continued to improve in ways that seemed to go beyond coincidence. She was offered additional shifts during busy periods, received compliments from customers who specifically requested her service, and found herself naturally developing regular customers who would ask to be seated in her section. But the most significant change was in Maria's overall confidence and energy level. The winning consciousness that the three words were instilling began affecting how she carried herself, how she interacted with people, and how she approached challenges. She felt more positive, more capable, and more optimistic about her future. 3 months after beginning to use the principle consistently, Maria received an offer that would change her life trajectory. A regular customer, who owned several successful businesses, had been impressed by Maria's service and attitude. He offered her a position as a customer service manager at one of his companies, with better pay, regular hours, health benefits, and opportunities for advancement. The transition from restaurant work to office management required Maria to learn new skills and adapt to a different work environment. But her newfound confidence and positive attitude made the adjustment smoother than she had expected. Within a year, she had been promoted twice and was earning nearly double what she had made as a server. But perhaps most importantly, Maria had discovered that the three words weren't just about changing external circumstances. They were about awakening to her own power, to influence her experience through the consciousness she brought to every situation. She continued using the words daily, not just for financial abundance, but as a way of maintaining alignment with success consciousness in all areas of her life. Maria's story illustrates how the three-word principle works by gradually shifting your identity from someone who struggles to someone who naturally succeeds. This identity shift then influences your perceptions, decisions, and actions in ways that attract opportunities and circumstances aligned with your new self-concept. The scientific principle underlying this transformation is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways and reorganize itself throughout your life. When you consistently repeat empowering words with emotional conviction, you literally rewire your brain to operate from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity consciousness. Each repetition of "I win now" creates and strengthens neural pathways associated with confidence, success, and abundance. Over time, these new pathways become your default mental patterns, automatically influencing your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in ways that attract more winning experiences. This neuroplasticity explains why some people seem naturally lucky, while others struggle despite working hard. The lucky people have developed neural pathways that automatically notice opportunities, make confident decisions, and expect positive outcomes. Their brains are literally wired for success. The struggling people, conversely, have neural pathways programmed for limitation, difficulty, and disappointment. Their brains automatically filter out opportunities, hesitate in decision-making, and expect problems. This isn't a character flaw or personal weakness. It's simply the result of repeated thought patterns that have become neurologically embedded. The beautiful truth is that you can reprogram your neural pathways at any age and in any circumstances. Your brain doesn't distinguish between current reality and vividly imagined experiences. When you declare "win now" with genuine emotion and clear visualization, your brain records this as a real experience and begins creating new patterns based on winning rather than losing. As you continue using the 3 words consistently, you're essentially conducting a gradual but profound reprogramming of your subconscious mind. The old patterns of limitation and struggle begin weakening from disuse, while the new patterns of abundance and success grow stronger and more dominant. Eventually, thinking winning thoughts and expecting successful outcomes becomes as automatic as the old patterns of limitation used to be. You don't have to consciously work at maintaining positive expectations. They become your natural mental state. As we near the conclusion of this transformative journey together, I want you to understand that you now possess a key that can unlock abundance in every area of your life. The 3 words "a win now" are not just about lottery tickets, they're about awakening to your true nature as a spiritual being with unlimited creative potential. Your consciousness is the most powerful tool you possess for shaping your experience. When you align that consciousness with abundance, victory, and success, your external world has no choice but to reflect that internal alignment. The lottery tickets, the opportunities, the unexpected windfalls, these are all simply symptoms of a consciousness that has awakened to its own creative power. I encourage you to begin using this principle immediately, but remember that consistency is the key to lasting transformation. Don't just speak these words once and expect miraculous results. Make them part of your daily spiritual practice. Let them reshape your identity from someone who might win to someone who knows that winning is their natural state. Start each day by declaring "win now" under grace in perfect ways, and feel the truth of these words resonating through your entire being. End each day with the same declaration, programming your subconscious mind to work on your behalf while you sleep. Use these words before any financial decision, any important conversation, any challenging situation. Let them become the soundtrack of your consciousness, the background music of your mental and emotional life. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel the truth of these principles in your heart, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share your experiences in the comments as you begin applying these principles. Your success story might be the inspiration someone else needs to transform their own financial reality. Remember, you are not a victim of circumstances. You are a conscious creator with the power to shape your experience through the words you speak, the beliefs you hold, and the consciousness you maintain. The universe is not withholding abundance from you. You simply need to align yourself with the frequency that allows abundance to flow naturally into your experience. Speak the words "a win" now under grace in perfect ways, with absolute conviction. Feel them reshaping your consciousness, reprogramming your subconscious, and aligning you with the infinite abundance that is your divine birthright. Trust the process, even when external evidence hasn't yet appeared. Your breakthrough is not a matter of if, but when. The 3 words that changed Sarah's life, that opened new possibilities for Marcus, that transformed Jennifer's relationship with money, and that awakened Maria to her unlimited potential, are now yours to use. Let them become the foundation of your new financial identity. Let them guide you into the abundant life that has always been waiting for your recognition and acceptance. Your winning consciousness begins now. Your abundant life starts today. The universe is ready to respond to your declaration of victory. All that remains is for you to speak the words with unwavering conviction, and watch as your reality transforms to match your newfound consciousness of success and prosperity. I win now under grace in perfect ways. Make these words your truth, and watch as truth becomes your lived experience in ways that will amaze and inspire you for years to come.